Behind every spotlight, every roaring crowd, and every magazine cover, there are stories the world never truly saw. Stories of pain, courage, and resilience. For decades, HIV and AIDS carried a heavy shadow, and many of the brightest stars in music, sports, and culture were forced to fight battles in silence. Today, we remember not just their illness, but their lives, their impact, and their unshakable bravery. These are 7 unforgettable figures whose stories still echo through time. 1. Freddie Mercury, the voice of Queen, the legend who turned rock concerts into opera halls, and the man whose presence could fill stadiums with fire. His voice was thunder and velvet all at once, soaring through anthems like Bohemian Rhapsody and We Are the Champions. But behind the spectacle, Freddie was living with a secret that the world wouldn't know until the very end. In 1987, he was diagnosed with AIDS. Instead of announcing it to the public, he poured his energy into music, recording some of Queen's most powerful songs while his health declined. Perhaps the most haunting was The Show Must Go On, a track recorded when he could barely stand, yet his voice still roared with unmatched force. On November 23, 1991, Freddie Mercury finally confirmed the rumors. He had AIDS. Just one day later, he was gone at the age of 45. His death shocked the world. But his legacy? It became larger than life. Freddie Mercury showed us that even in silence, even in pain, brilliance can shine. He didn't let AIDS define him. He defined it with every note, every strut, every impossible high. Freddie Mercury didn't just sing until the end. He left the stage like a god of rock, immortal and unforgettable. 2. Magic Johnson, November 7th, 1991. The sports world froze. The Los Angeles Lakers legend, Olympic gold medalist, and one of the greatest players to ever step on a basketball court walked up to the microphone. His words shook the globe. Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers. It was unthinkable. Magic Johnson wasn't just an athlete, he was the embodiment of strength, swagger, and success. For millions, HIV had always been whispered about in shame, seen as something that happened to other people. But in that moment, it had a new face, the smiling superstar who had dominated the NBA. The announcement was a cultural earthquake. People gasped, cried, and feared it was the end of Magic's life. But Magic didn't disappear. He fought. With early treatment, relentless optimism, and an unstoppable drive, he turned his diagnosis into a mission. He launched the Magic Johnson Foundation, bringing awareness, prevention, and education to communities across America. Decades later, he's not just alive, he's thriving, a living legend, redefining what it means to live with HIV. Magic Johnson's story wasn't just a retirement speech, it was a movement. He showed the world that HIV is not the end. It's a battle, yes, but it can be faced with courage, faith, and determination. 3. Eazy-E, the godfather of gangsta rap, the street prophet from Compton, and the man who co-founded NWA. His raw lyrics gave a voice to the rage, the reality, and the rebellion of the streets. To millions, he was untouchable, a symbol of toughness in an industry built on bravado. But in early 1995, the mask dropped. After being rushed to the hospital for what many thought was asthma, Eazy-E delivered a shocking announcement. He had AIDS. The hip-hop world was stunned. In a culture that rarely spoke about the disease, the news hit like a lightning bolt. Just 1 week after his diagnosis became public, on March 26, 1995, Eazy-E was gone. He was only 30 years old. His death rattled the music industry. For the first time, HIV and AIDS weren't just headlines in someone else's story. They had taken one of rap's own. In his final message, Eazy-E didn't drop a diss track, he dropped a plea. He urged his fans to protect themselves, to face the truth that had long been buried under silence and stigma. Eazy-E's life was loud, defiant, and unapologetic. But his death forced an entire generation to stop and listen. In the end, he didn't just change music, he changed the conversation. 4. Ryan White. He wasn't a rock star, a movie icon, or an athlete. He was just a kid from Kokomo, Indiana, a boy who loved skating, music, and hanging out with friends. But in 1984, at only 13 years old, Ryan's life changed forever when a contaminated blood transfusion gave him HIV. Back then, AIDS was feared more than it was understood. When word spread about his diagnosis, his school tried to keep him out. Parents protested, friends disappeared, fear drowned out facts, and Ryan became a target of ignorance and stigma. But Ryan and his mother refused to back down. They fought in court. They spoke out. Slowly, America began to see the truth, not just about HIV, but about humanity. Celebrities rallied around him. Elton John called him a hero. Even Congress listened. Ryan's quiet courage transformed into a national movement, changing how the disease was seen in homes, schools, and hospitals. Sadly, on April 8, 1990, Ryan passed away just a month before his high school graduation. He was only 18, but his story didn't end there. The Ryan White Care Act, passed in his honor, has since provided billions of dollars in funding for people living with HIV/AIDS. Ryan White may have been just a boy, but he left behind a legacy bigger than most achieve in a lifetime. His face, his story, and his bravery forever reshaped the fight against AIDS. Arthur Ashe, a champion both on and off the court. He wasn't just the first black man to win the U.S. Open, Wimbledon, and the Australian Open. He was a symbol of dignity, intelligence, and quiet strength in a sport once closed to people like him. His grace with a racket broke barriers, but his greatest battle came without one. In 1988, Arthur revealed that he had contracted HIV from a tainted blood transfusion during heart surgery. The world was stunned. The athlete who had faced down giants on the tennis court was now fighting an invisible opponent shrouded in fear and stigma. But Ashe didn't hide. He spoke. He educated. He used his platform not for pity, but for change. He founded the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the defeat of AIDS, testified before Congress, and stood in front of classrooms full of children, urging compassion and understanding. His words carried the same precision and power as his serve, but now his opponent was ignorance. On February 6, 1993, Arthur Ashe passed away at just 49 years old from AIDS-related pneumonia. His death broke hearts, but his life continues to inspire. Today, stadiums bear his name, statues honor his courage, and his voice still echoes as a reminder that true champions fight for more than trophies. They fight for truth. In 6, Elizabeth Glaser. She wasn't a movie star or an athlete. She was a wife, a mother, and a woman who never expected to become a warrior, but fate had other plans. In 1981, during childbirth, Elizabeth received a blood transfusion. What was supposed to save her life instead gave her HIV. Unknowingly, she passed the virus to her daughter Ariel, and later to her son Jake. When Ariel died at just 7 years old, Elizabeth's grief turned into fire. She refused to stay silent. At a time when few dared to speak about AIDS, especially in children, Elizabeth stepped forward. With raw honesty and a mother's determination, she co-founded the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, demanding awareness, funding, and compassion. She testified before Congress with tears in her eyes and fury in her voice. She challenged leaders, the media, and the public to face the reality of pediatric AIDS. Elizabeth was no longer just fighting for her family. She was fighting for millions of children around the world. On December 3, 1994, Elizabeth Glaser lost her own battle at the age of 47. But she didn't lose the war. Her foundation has since raised billions of dollars for research, treatment, and prevention. Her courage turned heartbreak into hope, and her voice still speaks for children who cannot speak for themselves. 7. Gia Karangi. Before Instagram, before the term supermodel ruled the world, there was Gia. She wasn't just a model, she was the model, wild, magnetic, and impossibly beautiful. Gia stormed into the fashion scene like a hurricane in stilettos. Every camera loved her, every magazine wanted her, and she became the face of a generation. But behind the flashing lights and flawless photos, Gia was fighting demons, addiction, loneliness, and a world that valued her beauty, but ignored her pain. In the mid-1980s, at just 26 years old, Gia became one of the first women to be diagnosed with AIDS after contracting HIV through intravenous drug use. It was a death sentence wrapped in stigma. On November 18, 1986, she died alone in a hospital bed in Philadelphia, her fame already forgotten by much of the world. But Gia's story didn't disappear. It became a haunting reminder that beauty can't shield you, that fame can't save you, and that even icons can be fragile. Years later, her life was immortalized in documentaries, books, and Angelina Jolie's award-winning portrayal in the film Gia. But more than that, Gia Karangi lives on as a symbol of vulnerability and truth. She showed the world the cost of looking away too soon, and why we must never forget. These 7 lives, Freddie Mercury, Magic Johnson, Eazy-E, Ryan White, Arthur Ashe, Elizabeth Glaser, and Gia Karangi, remind us that HIV and AIDS were never just medical battles. They were human battles, fought on stages, courts, streets, and in quiet hospital rooms. Each of them faced fear, stigma, and silence, yet each left behind something far greater than sorrow. Freddie's voice still shakes the rafters of stadiums. Magic Johnson continues to prove that life with HIV can mean thriving, not fading. Eazy-E's final words still echo as a warning and a plea. Ryan White forced America to face its fear through the innocence of a child. Arthur Ashe turned dignity into activism. Elizabeth Glaser transformed grief into hope, and Gia Karangi became a symbol of fragility and truth in a world blinded by beauty. Their stories are more than tragedies. They are lessons, they are legacies. They remind us that no amount of fame, fortune, or beauty can protect us from illness, but that courage, honesty, and compassion can transform suffering into change. So, as we look back, we don't just mourn what was lost. We honor what was left behind: a voice, a movement, a foundation, a law, a legacy that continues to shine. Because in the end, it's not the disease that defines them. It's the way they lived, the truths they told, and the walls they broke down for all of us.